The snow had been falling since sunset, soft at first, almost gentle, then heavier, as if the sky itself was tired of holding everything in. Christmas lights flickered on houses lining the street, glowing behind warm windows filled with laughter, music, and the smell of cooked food. Inside those homes, families gathered around tables and trees. Outside, the cold owned the night. Sarah tightened her grip on the plastic grocery bag in her hand. It was thin and stretched, holding a change of clothes, a half-empty water bottle, and a folded photograph she refused to let go of. Her breath came out in small white clouds as she walked, her boots damp from snow that had already soaked through. Her children followed close behind. Emma, 8 years old, tried to be brave. She kept her chin up, pretending the cold didn't bother her, pretending she wasn't hungry. Noah, only 5, stumbled every few steps, his small fingers clenched around his mother's coat. His cheeks were red, his lips pale. "Mom," he whispered, voice shaking, "are we going somewhere warm?" Sarah swallowed. Her throat burned, not from the cold, but from the answer she didn't have. "Soon," she said softly, though she didn't know if it was true. 2 years ago, Christmas meant something different. 2 years ago, her husband Mark had lifted Noah onto his shoulders while Emma placed the star on top of the tree. 2 years ago, laughter filled their small apartment, and the future felt safe. Then came the knock at the door. The uniform. The folded flag. The words she still heard in her dreams. Everything unraveled after that. Medical bills, rent increases, promises that never came through. Friends tried to help at first, but sympathy fades when problems don't. Tonight, the shelter was full. The church hall lights were off. Every door felt closed. A distant carol drifted through the air. Silent night, and Sarah nearly laughed at the cruelty of it. She stopped under a streetlight, snow gathering on her hair. Emma tugged her sleeve. "Mom, it's okay," Emma said quietly, too mature for her age. "I'm not that cold." That was when Sarah almost broke. She turned away so her children wouldn't see her cry. "Ma'am." The voice came from behind her, calm, steady, unfamiliar. Sarah's heart slammed into her chest. Instinctively, she pulled the children closer and turned around. A man stood several feet away, hands visible, palms open. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a posture that didn't sag despite the cold. His jacket looked old but well cared for. Snow dusted his boots. His eyes, sharp but kind, studied her not like a threat, but like a concern. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. "I didn't mean to startle you." Sarah said nothing. She had learned silence was safer. The man nodded slowly, understanding. "I saw you walking for a while. The kids, it's freezing out here." Emma stepped slightly behind her mother. Noah pressed his face into Sarah's side. "My name's Jake," the man continued. "I live nearby." Sarah's grip tightened. "I'm not asking for anything," Jake added, reading the fear in her eyes. "Just, are you okay?" The question hit harder than she expected. "No," she said before she could stop herself. Her voice cracked. "We're not." Jake exhaled quietly, as if he had already known the answer. "Are you heading somewhere?" he asked. Sarah shook her head. "We tried everywhere," she said, words spilling out now. "There's no room, no help. I just needed them to walk, to stay awake." Jake looked down at the kids' thin jackets, at Noah's shaking legs. Something dark flickered behind his eyes. Memory, perhaps. Pain. "I served," he said after a moment. "Navy SEAL. Retired." He didn't say it proudly. He said it like an explanation, like a warning. "I've seen what happens to families left behind," he continued. "I promised myself I'd never ignore it." Snow fell between them, quiet and heavy. Sarah studied him, searched for danger, for lies. Instead, she found exhaustion that matched her own. Jake took a careful step back, giving her space. "I have a warm place," he said gently. "Food, heat, beds. Just for tonight. No strings." Sarah's heart raced. Every lesson she had ever learned screamed don't trust strangers. But her children were cold. And Christmas night was growing darker. Jake met her eyes. "Come with me," he said. And for the first time in weeks, Sarah felt something stir beneath the fear. Hope. The walk felt longer than it should have, though it was only a few blocks. Snow crunched beneath their feet, and every step Sarah took felt like a gamble she might regret. Jake walked a few paces ahead, not too close, not too far, constantly glancing back to make sure the children were keeping up. "You okay back there, buddy?" he asked Noah gently. Noah nodded, though his legs were clearly tired. Without a word, Jake slowed his pace. Sarah noticed everything. How he stayed in the lighted parts of the street, how he never reached toward the children, how his voice never rose. It was the behavior of someone trained to protect, not control. They stopped in front of a small house at the corner of the block. It wasn't decorated like the others. No blinking lights, no inflatable snowmen, but the porch light was on, steady and warm, cutting through the snow like a promise. "This is it," Jake said. Sarah hesitated again. "It's okay," Jake added quickly. "If you change your mind, I understand." She looked down at her children. Emma's eyes were wide, reflecting the porch light. Noah leaned heavily against her leg. She nodded. Inside, warmth wrapped around them instantly. Real warmth. Not the temporary heat of a store doorway, but the kind that seeps into your bones. The heater hummed softly. The air smelled of soup, onions, and something baked earlier in the day. Noah exhaled loudly. "It's warm," he said in awe. Jake smiled faintly. "Yeah, it is." He helped Sarah hang their coats, then stepped back, giving them space as if he were the guest and they the hosts. "Bathrooms down the hall," he said. "Take your time." While the kids washed their hands, Sarah stood frozen in the entryway. Her hands trembled. Not from cold now, but from the unfamiliar feeling of safety. She hadn't felt this in months. Maybe years. When they returned, Jake had set 3 bowls on the table. Steam rose gently from them. "It's just chicken soup," he said. "Nothing fancy." Emma sat carefully, as if afraid the chair might disappear. Noah didn't wait. He lifted his spoon with both hands and took a bite. His eyes widened. "Mom," he whispered urgently. "It's really good." Sarah watched her children eat, really eat, cheeks warming, shoulders relaxing. The sound of spoons against ceramic felt louder than any Christmas music. Her chest tightened. Jake didn't sit with them. Instead, he leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching from a distance. Not guarding, witnessing. "Thank you," Sarah said quietly. "I don't know how to repay you." Jake shook his head. "You don't." The words were simple, final. Later, after the kids finished eating, Jake brought out clean blankets. Thick, soft ones that smelled like laundry soap. "They can sleep on the couch," he said. "I'll take the chair." "That's not necessary," Sarah protested. "It is," he replied gently. "Trust me." Emma curled up almost instantly, exhaustion winning. Noah fought sleep, eyes blinking slowly. "Are we safe?" he asked in a small voice. Jake knelt down, lowering himself to nose level. "Yeah," he said. "You are." The certainty in his voice did what Sarah couldn't. Noah's eyes closed. When the house finally grew quiet, Sarah sat at the table, hands wrapped around a mug Jake had placed there without a word. Tea, honey, small kindnesses stacked together until they felt overwhelming. "My husband died overseas," she said suddenly, breaking the silence. 2 years ago. Jake didn't interrupt. "He was everything," she continued. "And when he was gone, so was our balance. I tried. I really tried." Her voice cracked. Jake nodded once. "I know." She looked at him. "How?" He walked to a drawer and pulled out an old photograph. Faded edges. A group of men in uniform, arms around each other, smiling like they didn't know what was coming. "I lost brothers," Jake said quietly. "And I've seen what happens after the funerals end." He placed the photo face down. "I promised myself," he continued, "that if I ever had the chance, I'd step in." Sarah's tears fell freely now. "Why tonight?" she asked. Jake looked toward the window, where snow still fell. "Because Christmas," he said, "isn't supposed to be survived alone." The house settled into silence again. Full, warm, alive. And for the first time in a long time, Sarah allowed herself to sleep without fear. Morning arrived softly, as if afraid to wake anyone. Pale sunlight slipped through the thin curtains, casting gentle shadows across the living room floor. For a moment, Sarah didn't know where she was. Then she heard it. The quiet hum of the heater, the slow, steady breathing of her children, and her chest tightened with relief. She sat up slowly on the edge of the couch. Emma was curled beneath one blanket, her hair spread across the pillow. Noah lay sprawled beside her, one sock missing, his face peaceful in a way Sarah hadn't seen in months. They looked safe, truly safe. Tears filled Sarah's eyes. She stood and padded toward the kitchen. The smell of coffee and toasted bread met her halfway down the hall. Jake stood at the counter, moving with practiced calm, as if this were just another morning. "Good morning," he said quietly, not turning around. "I didn't want to wake them." Sarah nodded, unsure of her voice. On the small table sat 3 neatly wrapped gifts, simple brown paper, tied with string. A modest Christmas tree stood in the corner, barely taller than Emma, decorated with plain white lights and a few wooden ornaments. Sarah froze. "I can't," she whispered. "This is too much." Jake finally turned to face her. "They're just small things," he said. "And they're not charity." She frowned. "Then what are they?" "Recognition," he replied, "for making it through." The children woke moments later. Emma sat up first, eyes widening as she took in the room. "Mom," she whispered, "is it Christmas?" Sarah smiled through tears. "Yes, baby, it is." Noah spotted the gifts and gasped. "Are those for us?" Jake knelt and slid them closer. "Only if you promise to open them slowly." Laughter filled the room, soft at first, then real. Emma unwrapped a warm sweater and a small book. Noah tore into his package to find a toy truck, his joy unfiltered. Sarah's gift was last, a simple envelope. Inside was a handwritten note and a card. "Housing assistance. Approved." Her knees buckled. Jake steadied her chair. "Sit," he said gently. "I don't understand," she whispered. "I run a small foundation," Jake explained. "We help military families, widows especially. Housing, job placement, education. Quiet work." Sarah stared at the card as if it might vanish. "You planned this?" she asked. Jake shook his head. "I planned to help someone. I didn't know it would be you." Breakfast passed in warmth and conversation. Toast, eggs, laughter. Real laughter. The kind that fills empty spaces. Afterward, Sarah finally asked the question that had been burning in her chest. "Why did someone like you end up alone on Christmas night?" Jake looked down at his coffee. He said. For a long time, he told her about leaving the service, about the silence that followed. About nights when the world felt too quiet, too empty. About how helping others was the only thing that brought him back. "Saving people doesn't end when the uniform comes off," he said. Outside, the snow had stopped. The world looked clean, reborn. When it was time to leave, Sarah hesitated at the door. "Is this goodbye?" she asked. Jake smiled softly. "No, this is the start." He handed her a small card with his number. "Call me. We'll figure out the next steps together." Emma hugged him without hesitation. Noah followed, wrapping his arms around Jake's leg. "Thank you for Christmas," Noah said seriously. Jake knelt. "Thank you for letting me be part of it." As Sarah stepped into the daylight with her children, the cold no longer felt cruel. The weight she had carried for so long felt lighter, shared. She looked back once more. Jake stood in the doorway, watching, not like a savior, but like someone who had finally found purpose again. And as they walked forward, Sarah realized something important. Sometimes, the miracle of Christmas isn't found under a tree. Sometimes, it finds you on the coldest night, and walks you home. Christmas tree sparkles.